Hello, everyone. First, I would like to take this chance to thank Dr. Fan and Dr. Li for putting together this wonderful webinar of Science Cafe in China and for the kind invitation. I'm honored to participate in this event and really appreciate this opportunity to introduce the research of my group. Today, I'm going to talk about the recent work of my group and collaborators on submillimeter scale multimaterial terrestrial robots. Since there are many videos in my presentation, I will turn off my camera first to ensure that the videos can play fluently. And after my talk, I will turn on my camera again. Okay. My talk includes 6 parts, starting with the introduction to the research background and the motivation. I will focus on the buckling-guided 3D assembly approach, and I will introduce the use of this assembly approach to design and fabricate submillimeter scale 3D robots. Then I will talk about the fundamental principles of the laser-controlled locomotion and the key parameters we play with to enable a variety of locomotion modes. Finally, I will talk about some applications of the developed terrestrial robots. As the modern civilization develops, there are rapidly growing demands of different types of intelligent robots at different scales. One of the important trends of development is to make the robots more miniaturized and more intelligent. Because robots at the millimeter or submillimeter scale can perform important tasks in some inaccessible spaces, they have been drawing more and more attention in emerging fields like wireless sensing, minimally invasive surgery, and inspection. Currently, the structural complexity and the material diversity of existing miniaturized robots are still limited. This is in part due to the limitations of advanced manufacturing methods. In particular, most existing robots at submillimeter scale take the simple geometric forms of spheres, tubes, rods, and arcs. Additionally, recently developed submillimeter scale robots can perform multimodal locomotion only in liquid media, mostly through the light actuation. So as you can see here, the fabrication of submillimeter scale terrestrial robots with complex 3D designs and integrated electronics is still very challenging. So this table shows representative fabrication techniques of 3D structures at submillimeter or microscale, such as the 3D stacking technology, two-photon lithography, and stress-induced assembly, and so on. However, these existing techniques show a clear trade-off between the geometric complexity and the material options. For example, the two-photon lithography can create high-resolution 3D structures in almost arbitrary 3D geometries. But only limited classes of materials can be used in this approach. In particular, you can hardly imagine the two-photon lithography can create high-performance semiconductor structures and electronics. Therefore, you can find a grand challenge here is to develop an approach that can build complex active 3D metastructures in high-performance materials like single crystal silicon. To address this challenge, we started relevant studies from 2012, and now we have established an approach distinct from all of the previous ones. The key idea is to go one step further beyond the traditional, well-established 2D fabrication, and we use compressive buckling to deform easily patterned 2D films into well-controlled 3D architectures. To enable the inverse 3D design, we developed a quantitative mechanics model that can map the 3D target configuration onto 2D precursor design. And based on this 3D assembly approach, we design and fabricate untethered submillimeter scale terrestrial robots with complex 3D geometries and multiple different materials. And another fundamental question is to establish design rules of the laser-controlled robot with desired locomotion modes of crawling, walking, turning, and jumping. Additionally, we are also interested in in exploring potential applications of the developed terrestrial robots. Great. Here I will use a very simple example to illustrate the process of the 3D assembly approach. First, we use a very soft elastomer material as the assembly platform, and we can apply a uniaxial pre-stretch along this direction. And this platform will provide forces required to reduce the compressive buckling. In the meanwhile, we can use the microelectronic technology to form pattern 2D thin films. And in this example, the film is made of single crystal silicon and shows a serpentine configuration. Then we integrate the patterned silicon film with the pre-stretched elastic substrate. And here, by using techniques of surface chemistry, we can create strong covalent bonding selectively only at the rest size. This means the other places in blue color are simply weak in the face and can pop up easily from the substrate surface after release of the pre-stretch in the substrate. And in this example, the 2D serpentine pattern deforms into a 3D conical coil. And this video shows how the 2D film pop up into 3D after release of pre-strain in the substrate. And this SEM image corresponds to an experimental result in single crystal silicon. And here I would like to emphasize that the silicon is a very brittle material and can undergo only 2% strain before its fracture. So here the mechanics analysis play an important role in the design, since we need to ensure the safety of the structure after this kind of larger deformation. In short, our idea is to go one step further beyond the well-established 2D fabrication through the introduction of structural design concepts to enable controlled 2D to 3D assembly. Since the microelectronic technologies can do mass production and thousands of components can be fabricated at the same batch, our 3D approach can also assemble thousands of 3D metal structures simultaneously. A powerful aspect of this assembly approach is the broad range of applicable material types. In addition to single crystal silicon, this approach also applies well to metals, polymers, ceramics, liquid crystal elastomers, and piezoelectric materials such as PVDF and PZT. Besides, the flexible printed circuit board and even integrated circuits can also be transformed into dissolved 3D configurations based on our buckling assembly approach. Another powerful aspect is the applicable range of length scales. So unlike many of the other approaches, the buckling guided approach applies perfectly well over a wide range of length scales from sub-micron scale to even meter scale. To provide some intuitional impressions, we compare assembled 3D structures with some objects in real life. Here, the formed structure at the sub-micron scale has a comparable dimension to blood cells. Adjacent to the microscale 3D structure sits a human hair. So you can find a human hair here across the structure. For millimeter and centimeter scale structures, we use a coin and a pen as a reference respectively. The rightmost panel represents the largest structure we have achieved, which is comparable to a human body. After my group and our collaborators published a few papers in this area, these works were quickly noticed by the editors of Nature Reviews Materials and Advanced Materials, and they invited us to write 2 review papers, which were both published as cover articles. If you look at this cover image, you will find that we can use a quite simple kirigami design to achieve a tiger at the micro scale. You can imagine that this tiger is completely flat at the initial state, and the compressive forces trigger its pop-up into this tiger. My group over the last few years focused on 4 different aspects, including conceiving new design concepts, developing robust design methods, inventing new assembly instruments, and exploring novel applications. Specifically, the design concepts mainly involve the designs of 2D precursors and deformable substrate and how you integrate them together. The development of design methods aims to answer the question of how to map the target 3D configuration onto the initial 2D pattern. The assembly instruments involve the loading and the characterization of hard and soft interface, multi-field-driven assembly, and the assembly at the nanoscale. In terms of the applications, we have explored the development of unusual electromagnetic devices, micro robots, and biomedical devices. Due to the time limit, I will just show you some representative results relevant to our micro robot design. Firstly, I would like to show you the kirigami design concept of the 2D precursor. And this kind of design can help us to avoid the Kinker-induced stress concentration like this one. Here, you can find that without any use of cuts in the membrane, there will be localized deformations in the central area of the membrane. And this will cause the fracture of the silicon or some other brittle materials. So by using kirigami cuts, this kind of localized deformations can be avoided. So this kind of kirigami design can open access to a variety of 3D membrane topologies unachievable previously. And here is an example that illustrates the assembly process of a 3D silicon kirigami. And here we use a set of fractal cards that divide the large square into 16 small squares, which are interconnected with each other. And this video shows the dynamic formation process. And this right top image corresponds to an experimental results in silicon. And you can see that the entire structure is just around 200 micron in the literal size. By introducing different types of ribbon designs and kirigami designs, we can create a diversity of 3D ribbon and membrane structures as shown in this slide. So on each row of the table, we show the 2D precursor design where the red color denotes the bonding sites with the elastomer substrate. The green images show our prediction of the 3D configurations. And on the last column corresponds to our experimental results, including the optical images and also the SEM images. And here, all of the experiments shown in this slide are made of single crystal silicon, and the very good agreements can be observed between our modeling and the experimental results for all of those different examples. To establish an inverse design method, we need to solve the problem of how to determine the initial 2D pattern and bonding sites for target 3D configuration. Based on a theoretical analysis of the differential geometry, we can convert the inverse design into a type of optimization problem. And here, the torsional angle and the width of crease serve as the optimization variables. Then we developed an optimization-based formulation of the inverse design problem, and we used the adaptive generic algorithm to solve the optimization problem. And the results on the middle and on the right show an example of the curvy ribbon optimized through this method can agree fairly well with the target configuration. And two interesting examples are shown in this slide. And here we use a mantis and a scorpion as our design target. Through our inverse design method, the optimized 2D precursor configuration can be obtained as shown here. And here again, the red color denotes the bonding size. The videos on the right show the dynamic process of the 2D to 3D assembly. And the resulting 3D structures in experiments indeed reproduce well the target 3D configurations. This slide provides more examples of inverse design through this optimization method. And here, the first column of the table shows the target 3D configuration with different kind of ribbon components. The second and the third columns present the optimized 3D configuration and the optical images of experiments based on our inverse design. And the last column corresponds to the 2D precursor pattern. If you look at the right bottom example, you will see that we can extract the key ribbon sketches of the floor as our design target. And here, the experimental results, again, agree well with our target. The inverse design of curved 3D surfaces is more challenging than the 3D ribbon structures. Here, we propose a strategy to solve the problem approximately by discretizing the 3D surface into 2D ribbon components. And then we can use the spatial thickness variation to achieve desired curvature distribution in the ribbon. And actually, through a mechanics analysis, we can derive an equation that correlates the curvature distribution with the thickness distribution of the 3D ribbon. And according to this analytical equation, we can assemble arc-shaped and asymmetric ribbon, curvy ribbons by using this kind of thickness distribution in the ribbon or this kind of distribution. And this inverse design method can be extended straightforwardly to centrally symmetric surfaces. And this slide shows 4 examples, including the hemisphere, drum-like surface, flower, and concave lenses. And these results show that the proposed inverse design method works very well for these centrally symmetric surfaces. And these 2 videos illustrate the process of 3D assembly for this hemisphere and this drum-like surface. And good agreements can be observed between the target and our optical images for the structural samples. This illustrates the general applicability of this inverse design method. And in the next part, I would like to discuss the use of this 3D assembly approach to design and fabricate submillimeter-scale 3D robots. And this slide shows the process of 3D assembly for robots with a crab-like configuration. So first, we define the pattern 2D precursor with a bilayer of polyimide and chip memory alloy with the silicon dioxide to serve as the bonding sites. Then we transfer the 2D precursor onto a pre-stretched elastomer substrate where the PDMS block provide compressive forces along this direction. Then the release of the pre-stretch transforms the 2D precursor into this crab-like 3D configuration. And the process is illustrated by these 2 videos. To form freestanding 3D robots after removing the elastomer substrate, we need to fix the deformation resulted from this 3D assembly process. And for this purpose, we explore the deposition of an additional silicon dioxide layer to fix the assembled 3D configuration. Based on this strategy, the 3D shape of the crab can be well maintained as long as the silicon dioxide shear is sufficiently thick. So you can see that this cute crab sample shown here has a literal dimension of around 500 micron. To quantify the shape fixation of the silicon dioxide deposition, we introduce a shape storage ratio based on the literal dimensions of the 3D structure before and after removing the substrate. For this 3D cage, circular helices and double floor helices, the shape storage ratios are all above 90%, indicating that the 3D shape can be well fixed in the freestanding state. The optical images on the bottom show some millimeter scale robots with a few other geometries. Because of the multi-layer design, under a temperature increase, the shape recovery of the shape memory alloy drives the flattening of the 3D structure and results in an intermediate 3D configuration due to the constraint of the silicon dioxide shear. And then during the cooling process, the reduction of the shape recovery force in SMA and the elastic recovery of silicon dioxide shear induce the spring back of the robot to the initial configuration. So the shape change between these 2 states during the heating and cooling is reversible. And this kind of reversible actuation scheme offers a very stable performance even after at a frequency of 5 Hz as shown in this video. And this kind of cyclic experiment uses a 3D ribbon structure with one side bonded to the substrate as shown in the video and this image. And we use a laser to heat the structure at a frequency of 5 Hz. The mechanism of the directional motion mainly relies on the asynchronous change in the shape during the laser heating. So you can, if you look at this image, you can see that the sequential laser heating results in asymmetric normal contact forces between the two legs and the floor as described here. And this enables a directional locomotion as shown by this video. And here, a high laser scanning frequency gives a high speed of movement, but this dependency is not monotonous. And there will be an optimal frequency, which will be discussed in the next section. Based on this locomotion mechanism, a directional walking motion can be achieved in the crab-like robot. And this rightmost video shows that the motion can be realized selectively in a single target robot out of an array of the microrobots. If you look at the detailed temperature change of the robot during the laser scanning, you can see that the scanning frequency can be used to adjust the amplitude and frequency of the temperature variation. Therefore, this scanning frequency is key to control the speed of the locomotion. So in the next section, I will talk about the fundamental science that governs the speed control and the locomotion mode of the 3D robot. According to the above introduction, you can notice that the speed of the robot mainly depends on the laser scanning frequency and how long distance it can move during each cycle. Therefore, both the geometric parameters and the laser scanning frequency can be used to control the speed of the robot. In terms of the locomotion mode, it depends both on the 2D precursor design and the laser scanning method, such as the direction and location of the laser. And this will be elaborated in the next few slides. We first look into the effect of the cyclist ratios on the speed of the robot. As I just mentioned, the speed depends on the laser scanning frequency, F frequency, and how long distance it can move during each cycle. That is the delta L over LO. And this normalized delta L can be calculated by mechanics modeling, and it can be expressed as a function of two cyclist ratios for a given temperature change. And this contour plot shows this delta L over LO as a function of two cyclist ratios. And these two ratios include this TSRO2 over TSMA and TPI over TSMA. When these two ratios take values close to this red region, the robot can move a longer distance during each cycle. And this is very useful to guide the selection of cyclist ratios in a robot design. Then we studied the effect of laser scanning frequency on the speed of the robot. And this dependency is not monotonous, as I just mentioned. This is because the frequency affects both this F frequency and also this value of temperature change during each cycle. This is also evidenced by the curves of temperature history shown here for 1 Hertz and 10 Hertz. So our results show that this temperature change decreases with increasing this frequency due to the insufficient heating and the reduced ability of the robot to recover. So considering both effects, an optimal laser scanning frequency exists to optimize the speed, which is around 10 Hertz according to our experiments. Then after optimization of the speed, we show an attribute plot of existing robots in terms of the maximum speed versus the length of the robot. So here, the red dashed line corresponds to terrestrial robots, and the blue dashed line denotes the aquatic robots. Besides, the yellow dots are light actuated robots, and our submillimeter-scale robots are marked by the red stars. From this set of comparison, you can see that our microrobots achieve the smallest dimensions among terrestrial robots with complex 3D designs. Additionally, our robots also show relatively high speed among various light actuated robots. Then we discussed the control of the locomotion mode by adjusting the strategy of laser scanning. And the top panel shows a 3-leg robot in which the turning behavior can be achieved by changing the direction of the laser scanning. So if you look at this video, you can see that this robot moves along the X direction if the laser scans from right to left. Then if you change the scanning to vertical direction, then the robot turns right to move downwards. The bottom panel shows a four-legged robot, which exhibits a walking motion along the x direction through alternate local heating of these two legs. Furthermore, the 2D precursor can be strategically designed to offer more complex locomotion modes. For example, in the four-legged robot I just showed in the last slide, if you use an asymmetric ribbon design with these two legs shorter than these two legs, then the asymmetric contact forces will result in a curvilinear crawling motion. And in this case, the laser scanning just keeps along this horizontal direction. But this kind of curvilinear motion can be achieved. If you use a serpentine ribbon design to construct a 3D robot with curvy legs, it will induce global twisting and bending deformations during the laser scanning. And this is very different from the localized deformations at the creases of previous designs. And because of this, the jumping motion can be obtained in this micro-robot. This slide shows a few more complex precursor designs. The resulting 3D structures can achieve various actuation deformation modes under a global heating with a large light spot. According to the videos on the left, you can see that these structures experience a rich diversity of deformation mode, including the twisting, bending, and biaxial expansion. Again, you can find the prediction of actuation deformations based on FEA agrees well with the optical images in experiments. So these two tables correspond to the results from different view angles. And finally, I will talk about the potential applications of these micro-robots. Okay, we know that the localization is quite important in real-world applications, especially at the micro scale, because you need to know the necessary position information of the robots in many scenarios. And in this work, we integrate an onboard retroreflector and set up a simple light path for detection. And by doing so, we realize the real-time localization of our 3D robots. And besides, our submillimeter scale robots can also realize dynamic monitoring of environmental parameters such as the relative humidity, UV radiation level, and also pH value. And all these information could be important in, by medical applications. And these results show that our robots have a great potential to be operated as a kind of multifunctional platforms for uses in vivo surgery, dynamic cultural medium, and also detection and monitoring of inaccessible nano spaces. And finally, I would like to make a short summary of this talk. Through a blending of origami arts, mechanics theories, and microfabrication techniques, we developed a 3D assembly approach for high-performance materials and also micro-robots. And this approach enables fabrication of submillimeter scale robots with complex 3D geometries and diverse material types. Optimized 2D precursor designs associated with scanning laser control strategy enable a variety of terrestrial locomotion modes, including crawling, walking, and jumping. And furthermore, onboard photonic components and colorimetric sensors allow for wireless communication and positioning. And there are also many other open opportunities because we have this kind of manufacturing capability. We can achieve many different types of animal-like structures with the integrated electronics. Okay, the research Professor Yunggong Huang and Professor John Rogers at Northwestern University. Xiaogang Guo is my former postdoc and now an associate professor at the Beijing Institute of Technology. And Mengdi Han is a former postdoc of Professor Rogers and now an assistant professor at Peking University. Also, I would like to thank all the members of my research group. And additionally, I would like to deliver my thanks for the funding supports from these agencies. And with that, I would like to close and thank you for your attention.
Thanks for the wonderful presentation from Professor Zhang. Any questions from the audience to Professor Zhang regarding this presentation? You can also raise your question from the dialogue block.
So I have a question. Can you hear me well?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh, okay. So I think this is a very nice talk, Professor Zhang. So the question is, so you showed a very nice demos of using laser to generating high performance, high frequency locomotions. Do you think this solution can be used in another medium? For example, now you prove that in the air, it can move very fast. What about, let's say, on water? Do you think that the robots can also move well on water? Thank you.
Oh, thank you for the very good question. Yes, this is an important concern. Actually, in our current work, we just tested the strategy on solid surface, and here by using the laser heating, we need a large temperature variation during the cycle of laser scanning. So the cooling process could be important, and heating is also need to be very fast. If we put the micro robot on water, I think we need to optimize the strategy because the temperature increase might not be that fast than in air. So this is a very good direction we can explore for our ongoing research. Yeah. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.